Students, we are in the continuation. We are in the seventh part of elbow complex. So I've been talking about the importance of the range of motion. Like in any joint, it is important to have the full available range of motion. So the factors determining the range of motion in elbow joint are the type of motion. Type of motion here we are talking about whether it is active or passive. The position of the forearm. The position of the forearm, earlier slide we have been discussing about whether the forearm is in pronation or whether it is in supination. The third and important factor is the position of the shoulder. These three factors are very important for the effective and complete range of motion in the elbow joint. The active range of motion of elbow flexion with forearm supinated is typically considered to be between 135 to 145 degrees. The forearm is supinated, the maximum range of elbow flexion from extension is 135 to 145 degrees. The range of motion for passive flexion is between 150 and 160 degrees of range of motion. The range of active flexion at the elbow is usually less than the range of passive motion. Because of why there is less range of motion in active is because of the bulk of the contracting the elbow flexor muscles. As we all know, the major bulk is from the biceps brachii, the brachialis and the brachioradialis. So the main the when the elbow comes into complete flexion at the end of the range, the bulk of the biceps and the other brachialis as well as brachioradialis will uh, form a obstacle for the further flexion. But during passive flexion, as the muscle does not need to contract, there is still further range of motion possible. So the range of active flexion at the elbow is usually less than the range of passive motion because of the bulk of contracting flexors on the anterior surface of the humerus, which may interfere with the approximation of the forearm with the humerus. The position of the forearm also affects the flexion range of motion. When the forearm is either in pronation or midway between supination and pronation, the range of motion is less than it is when the forearm is supinated. The position of the shoulder may affect the range of motion available to the elbow joint. Two joint muscles such as biceps brachii and the triceps that cross both the shoulder and the elbow joint may limit the range of motion at the elbow if a full range of motion is attempted at both the joints. So here we are discussing about the two joint muscles. You all know that the two joint muscles, earlier you would have studied that in the muscle chapter muscle, that active and passive insufficiency, and mostly these insufficiencies happen in muscles which are like which are acting in two joints. That's why you have to remember that there should not be this will affect the range of motion. So two joint muscles, you have to always remember about the insufficiencies. Other factors that limit the range of motion but help provide stability for the elbow are the configuration of the joint surfaces, the ligaments, and the joint capsule. These three are very important. The other factors which are determining the limit the range of motion. Earlier we have studied the other important what affects the type of motion of the active and passive, position of forearm, position of the shoulder. Here we are talking about other factors and which help provide stability for the elbow joint configuration are joint surfaces, the ligaments, and the joint capsule. The elbow has inherent, and before this we have already studied about the importance of the position of the forearm, whether it is pronation or supination. The elbow has inherent articular stability at the extremes of extension and flexion. In full extension, in full extension, the humero-ulnar joint is in a closed pack position You have already studied what is a closed packed position. So in full extension, the humero-ulnar joint is full packed. In this position, the bony contact of the olecranon process in the olecranon fossa limits the end of the extension range. That is what we call as the bony end range, bony block, or what we call as bony end field. So, and this is because the olecranon fossa, lodges into the olecranon fossa of posterior part of the lower end of humerus, and this gives a stability to the humero-ulnar joint during complete or full extension. And the configuration of the joint surface structures helps provide valgus and varus stability. This helps in providing a stability to prevent any kind of varus, or what you call as lateral, or valgus means lateral movement, varus means medial movement of the ulna. So this provides the humero-ulnar bony stability. This stability has been provided. The bony components, the medial collateral ligament and the anterior joint capsule contribute equally to resist valgus stress in full extension. In full extension, these components such as the bony components, which we already discussed here, the medial collateral ligament and the anterior capsule, these three bony components of the humero-ulnar joint, the medial collateral ligament and the anterior joint capsule contribute equally to resist valgus stress in full extension. The bony components provide half of the resistance to the varus stress in full extension, and the lateral collateral complex and the joint capsule provide the other half of the resistance. You remember the lateral collateral ligament and the lateral ulnar collateral ligament with the annular ligament, which we have studied in the earlier slides, which will also provide a varus stress. That is a stress which will provide any kind of movement of the forearm towards what we call as a medial side direction. Resistance to joint distraction in the extended position is provided entirely by soft tissue structure. Resistance to joint distraction means longitudinal distraction of the joint. There is no bony stability, only the ligaments and the soft tissues of the ligaments, joint capsule and the muscles are providing the resistance or counteracting force. Approximation of the coronoid process with the coronoid fossa and the rim of the radial head in the radial fossa limits extreme flexion. Earlier we have discussed regarding why there is a decreased range of flexion in active flexion compared to the passive flexion is because of the bulk of the anterior flexor muscle, elbow flexor muscle. Along with that block, you have the coronoid process of the ulna lodging into the corona anterior surface of the lower end of humerus. You have coronoid fossa. The coronoid process of the ulna lodges into the coronoid fossa when there is complete flexion. And here in the radius, the radial rim, the rim of the radial head, that is the lateral side of the fovea of the head, is lodging onto the radial fossa of the anterior surface of the lower end of, which is present in the anterior surface of the lower end of humerus. Both of them limits flexion. In 90 degrees of flexion, the anterior part of the medial collateral ligament provides the primary resistance to both distraction and valgus stress. Earlier we have studied regarding the medial collateral ligament, how it gives the last slide, how along with the bony stability, the medial collateral ligament helps in providing a kind of what we call as lateral stress, that is valgus stress. This that was in complete extension, but in 90-degree flexion also, and there you have the anterior capsule also. So here you are having medial collateral ligament also plays resistance to valgus stress as well as resistance to distraction also along with the valgus stress in 90-degree of flexion, that is the anterior part of the medial collateral ligament. If the anterior portion of the medial collateral ligament becomes lax through overstretching, a medial instability will result when the elbow is in flexed position. Also, That means that there will be a medial instability whenever there is a injury to the medial collateral ligament. Also, the carrying angle will increase. We all know that the three components, that is a medial collateral ligament, the bony stability, and then the anterior joint capsule, gives stability for valgus stress, that is lateral stress, lateral movement of the humerus and ulna, for that is forearm, is prevented by these three factors. So when the medial collateral ligament is injured, it will also affect it will increase the carrying angle. The majority of the resistance to varus stress when the elbow is flexed to 90 degree is provided by the osseous structures of the joint. The bony structures provide the medial stress, that is a varus stress, whenever the elbow is in 90 degree of flexion, and only a slight amount is provided by the lateral collateral and the joint capsule. So that we cannot, even though the medial collateral ligament has a major role to play to decrease the carrying angle, if at all there is any injury, the carrying angle may increase. But lateral collateral ligaments injury does not create such a increased varus stress because of the presence of the bony structure, which will give stability or resistance against the varus stress. The anterior joint capsule contributes only slightly to the varus or valgus stability and provides little resistance to distraction when the elbow is flexed. We have already discussed that. So only soft tissue structures are providing, that is mostly the muscles and the ligaments are providing distractive resistance to distraction. Co-contractions of the flexor and extensor muscles of the elbow and wrist and hand help to provide stability for the elbow during forceful motions of the wrist and the fingers, and in activities in which the arms are used to support the body weight. So here the co-contraction means the cooperating contraction, or what we call as a combined contractions of the flexor and extensor muscles of the elbow, wrist, and the hand help to provide stability for the elbow during forceful motions of the wrist and fingers, and in activities in which the arms are used to support the body weight. So in any activity where the whole body weight has to be supported, the earlier joint stress and stability factor we have discussed does not happen individually or in an isolated manner. They happen in a co-contracted manner of both flexor and extensor muscles of all which muscle joints, all the joints such as elbow, wrist, and hand. So the whole upper arm, upper limb together goes for a co-contraction of flexors and extensor to provide stability whenever it is related to a high load such as supporting the body weight. During pulling activities, such as when a person grasps and attempts to pull a fixed rod towards a body, the elbow joints are compressed by the contraction. Somebody is pulling up, pull ups or something like that are happen, some person doing. Then what happens is the elbow joints are compressed by the contractions of the muscle that cross the elbow and they act on the wrist and the hand. Those muscles are, for example, the muscles which is crossing, such as the triceps or the other the muscles we have talked earlier regarding the muscles which are playing a secondary role in the elbow, but which are the muscles of the hand, such as we have already discussed that in the last slides, that is extensor carpi radialis, the extensor digitorum communis, all those small, the profundus, all those muscles are the muscles of the wrist and hand also play a role in the elbow joint during any kind of pulling activity. Swelling or pain also may limit the range of motion of elbow motion. Whenever there is, as we are talking about pathology, swelling means water retention or inflammatory process is happening. That's why there is swelling. Pain is a common sign of injury. According to McGuigan and the Bookout investigated, they have conducted a study, the effect of intra-articular fluid on the range of motion. They found that flexion arc of motion decreased 2.1 degree millimeter of injected fluid. So whenever the swelling, there may be a decreased